This is a guide to the law on intentional homelessness. The starting point is section 191 of the Housing Act 1996, which sets out the statutory definition. Further details of the meaning of intentional homelessness can be found in the Code of Guidance, which is available online. Still more detail about intentional homelessness can be found in the extensive case law on the subject. I've put notes on the details of most of the cases I could find on intentional homelessness in the database, which can be found in the notes which go with this video. There's a link to the notes in the box below. The statutory definition of intentional homelessness is found at section 191 of the Housing Act 1996. Subsection 1 provides that a person becomes homeless intentionally if he deliberately does or fails to do anything in consequence of which he ceases to occupy accommodation which is available for his occupation and which it would have been reasonable for him to continue to occupy. Subsection 2 states that for the purposes of subsection 1, an act or omission in good faith on the part of a person who is unaware of any relevant fact shall not be treated as deliberate. Subsection 3 provides that a person shall be treated as becoming homeless intentionally if a. he enters into an arrangement under which he is required to cease to occupy accommodation which it would have been reasonable for him to continue to occupy, and the purpose of the arrangement is to enable him to become entitled to assistance under this part, and there is no other good reason why he is homeless. So let's have a look at that in a bit more detail, starting with section 191, which is where most of the arguments about intentional homelessness will focus. So in order to be intentionally homeless, you've got to have all four of the following. Firstly, a deliberate act or omission, leading to loss of accommodation, which would have remained available for you and which would have been reasonable for you to continue to occupy. Now, in order to be intentionally homeless, you've got to tick all four of those boxes. So you can have a deliberate act, which led to the loss of accommodation, but if that accommodation wasn't going to be available for you, for instance, if the landlord was going to sell it anyway, or if it wasn't reasonable for you to continue to occupy, for instance, because it was in a very bad condition, or you had suffered an injury which meant you couldn't continue to climb the stairs there, then you can't be intentionally homeless. Then there's section 1912, which provides that an act or omission in good faith on the part of somebody who is unaware of a material fact shall not be treated as deliberate. An example of that from the case law is where, for instance, somebody gave up their home in order to move into a pub which they were going to run, and they made inquiries as to whether the pub was going to be financially viable, which turned out to be wrong, and they had to give up the pub, becoming homeless. In that case, it was found that they weren't intentionally homeless because the deliberate act of giving up their previous accommodation to move into the pub was based on a mistake which was made in good faith. And then there's the last subsection, which is 1913, which provides that if you enter into an arrangement which leads to the loss of your accommodation, which would otherwise have been reasonable for you to continue to occupy, then you'll be intentionally homeless if that was the only reason you became homeless. I'm not going to say anything more about that for now because I'd have thought that's fairly obvious given the definition of intentional homelessness which we've just considered. So there it is, that's the statutory definition of intentional homelessness. If you didn't know about it already, that should give you a basic idea of what it's about. I'm going to make some further videos on more detailed aspects of intentional homelessness. This will include a look at the case law and the issues which have arisen in the cases, and the issue of what are the options available for people who've been found to be intentionally homeless, what are the consequences of it, and lastly the issue of breaking the chains of intentional homelessness, which is to say, what do you have to do and how long do you have to wait before you can reapply as a homeless person if you've been found intentionally homeless. So that's it for now. If you like this, then please hit the like button and subscribe so you'll know if more videos become available.